Monster Hunter, a series that has loomed over many people's heads, presents a tale as old as the series itself. I want to get into this. It looks really cool. Like, this looks really cool, but what even is this? What is this? What is any of this? With time, Capcom has tweaked some stuff here and some stuff there, all in an effort to make Monster Hunter more appealing to the Western audience. To newbies like me. And finally, with Monster Hunter Wilds, the barrier to entry has been moved squarely from niche but still mostly accessible to, you can probably figure this out now, come on, it even plays itself most of the time, just give it a try, come on. So I did, I bit the bullet. Am I now a Monster Hunter fan, or did its systems prove too uninteresting for a newcomer? I kinda loved it. Like, I really do like it, but a relationship, it's complicated. You see, I tell him I love his big monster hunting sword, and he says he loves me too. He says I'm big enough to handle a guy like him, but he's lying to me. So why won't you say that to my face? My VRAM, it's just not big enough to handle you, is it? God, if only I had a couple extra gigabytes. But no, I still can't let you go. Because Monster Hunter Wilds is a fantastic game through and through, and it fixes a lot of the problems that had kept me from enjoying the franchise in the first place, starting with its gameplay loop design. In older Monster Hunter games, you'd have a lobby you prepare in, make potions and upgrade your armor with a quest board or two guiding your next step. Once you're all readied up, you select a quest, the game loads, you pop into the same couple of maps, hunt and kill the monster or do whatever your objective in the region is, picking flowers or some crap, exhilarating gameplay. Load back into the lobby, repeat. Main story quests include a couple of basic cutscenes, but mostly lore dumps and that's kinda it. Just hunt the monsters, get better equipment, move on. That's the gameplay loop that older Monster Hunter fans were addicted to. And they were dying to get a lot of new people into it, but for a lot of outsiders, there just wasn't enough there. So does Monster Hunter Wilds fundamentally change that system? No. And that's a good thing. It shouldn't do that. The system's great. It's what makes Monster Hunter Monster Hunter. But what it does do is introduce more welcoming features around it so that now that gameplay loop is packaged in a much more accessible and inviting way. You start with an introductive story segment, very well made cutscenes and action sequences which drop you straight into the action after a perfectly placed tutorial area where you can test each and every weapon class and explore their combos. You're tasked with defeating a large monster. That's your first real task. The game boots up and you're already riding around with your sacred through the desert, avoiding enemies and making your way, fighting your first real threat, all while the game explains to you its core battle mechanics as you fight. Compare that to the previous Monster Hunter game, which starts you off by picking flowers and then moves you into killing small hordes of enemies, all while removing you from the game and placing you back into the lobby to explain each mechanic to you individually removed from gameplay. Yeah, we've come a long way. Now you're in a mostly open world, various wide open environments that you can just explore in and set up camp at any time. Leaving that lobby area through a loading screen and a quest selection board is now not the only way to go about things. If you want to just mark a monster in the map and go fight it, the game initiates quests automatically as soon as you land a hit. And if you're not a fan of the traversal aspects, the sacred can write itself there, allowing you to focus on grabbing resources along the way. What once was a more methodical process that required you to slow down and pick up each individual item you wanted is now much more streamlined and fluid. On your way to the quest, you'll collect all manners of mushrooms and literal pieces of shit. I'm aware some players actually prefer the old way of doing things regarding exploration and looting, and that's okay too, but as a newcomer to the series, the option to focus solely on the monster hunting was very much appreciated. It felt inviting. And this trend of invitefulness is something I felt all throughout my time with the lower rank campaign. Wilds introduces new mechanics slowly, but not too slowly. Just fast enough for you to get a grasp on the previous systems, before it throws something completely new at you, and before you know it, you're becoming a monster hunter. Speaking of, let's talk about the hunting itself, and wow is it fun. I love the wound system. I played a little bit of Monster Hunter Rise and it never clicked for me. I felt like combat was a little too slow and clunky, but all I had to do was take one look at these little red glowing spots and everything instantly clicked for me. I knew what monster hunting was all about. Target the weak points, break those tails, climb on them, smack them around, blow them up, use the map itself, get hit in the face a million times. It's just plain fun. There are not that many games out there with a combat system that makes fighting big-ass dragons disengaging. You'd think it'd be easy considering they're big dragons. They're cool, but it's so hard to make a little ant fight massive monsters and have it be fun and balanced. It's not like Elden Ring styled combat or anything, it's a lot more fast paced, especially if you pick a goofy weapon that spins all over the place. Getting hit isn't as punishing here because you can whistle your instant health delivery guy into your exact location in less than 5 seconds most of the time, and it'll bring you your first 8 potions. All that it asks for is just your subscription to the channel, so it's a great deal really. You also need to pay attention to your drinks, and your debuffs, and your weapons durability, because during combat there's never a moment where there's only one thing going on. There's always multiple angles to approach and things to keep in mind. As for the monster designs themselves, amazing really. Not a single monster feels too similar to another. Each one has their own unique movesets and weak points. You'll end up developing different strategies to take down each one of them. And it's a good thing that they're this fun, because you'll be taking them down a lot. That's the whole point of the game. So if you're also a newcomer considering purchasing Monster Hunter Wilds, and the idea of fighting the same cast of characters repeatedly to unlock their armor sets and weapons doesn't seem like it'll hook you in, it probably won't, and Monster Hunter Wilds might not be for you after all. Because even with the semi-open world, better tutorials and pacing, and a surprisingly good story, which I'm not even going to go deep into it or anything as to not spoil it, but is surprisingly interesting and has plot twists and a nice narrative, despite all that, what you'll be doing in this game is the same as it's always been. Fighting stronger and stronger monsters over and over to complete their armor sets and weapons. You're playing dress up. That's right, this entire game is just an elaborate ploy to get you to play dress up with your characters. If that sounds like the dream come true, welcome to the club. If you're not too keen, not your particular hit of dopamine, then I must come clean, Monster Hunter's not that evergreen title that you are looking for. But it was for me, and while I don't plan on crafting every weapon and maxing out every bit of armor, I am inclined to do all the side quests, craft my favorite set, and just explore around with some new weapons. Each class here plays like a completely different game. I've been mostly sticking to the sword and shield and the bow, having a lot of fun with both of these weapons, but I am eyeing up those dual blades. They look mighty cool to try out, and that insect glaive doesn't look too bad either. I wish I could say that's all I'm eyeing up in Wilds, but at the moment my eyes are too distracted by unloaded textures every time the game loads a cutscene and very low res models of everything not directly in front of me. Yes, we've reached that part of the video, and if you've been keeping up with Monster Hunter news, you'll know that this game is horribly optimized on PC, the platform I happen to play it on, and that is the sole fact standing between me and a confident recommendation of Monster Hunter Wilds to anyone who's even remotely interested in the series. During my time with the game, I've had encounters with invisible walls during area transitions, monsters that looked like a bunch of Doritos glued to each other, characters that hadn't left their N64 phase, and a bunch of technical issues with stuttery frame rates and bad frame pacing. And the part that hurts me as a video creator the most, I couldn't even record a lot of it because having my OBS open and recording the game was enough to crash it a lot of the time, and severely hurt performance most of the rest of the time. It wasn't a pretty looking game on PC, or even close to it for the majority of my playtime so far. If you're planning on picking this up, I wouldn't recommend playing it with anything under or even close to their recommended specs on Steam. I'm actually playing it with a much better GPU than recommended, and still, I'm getting all of these issues. 8 GB of VRAM is simply not doing it for this game. It just isn't. They're lying on their Steam page, so if your card has anything under 12, only pick this up if you really think you'll like it. Because even if you can get it to run, you'll have to be okay with it hooked up to AI life support for the duration of your playthrough. And if you're not a lucky guy who owns Nvidia's fancy schmancy newer cards, that life support will be AMD's, which is considerably worse, meaning your entire screen is subject to weird artifacting, textures just looking like sand all of a sudden, and the game's art style sometimes resembling Resident Evil 4 from the goddamn GameCube. It's bad, it just is. So I cannot, especially as a newcomer, recommend that you go out and buy Monster Hunter Wilds on PC unless you're running a close to top spec machine. At least until Capcom comes around and patches these issues up, which I'll assume they're working on it considering this has been a really successful release for them. So until then, steer clear of this release, keep up with updates, and wait for the fixes to come, hopefully in less than a couple months' time. But avoid this possible source of frustration that may sour your opinion on an otherwise great game. As for me, despite the issues, I'd say I am now officially a Monster Hunter fan. I will be playing the high-ranked chapters, doing all the side quests, and testing out some new weapons. While this game might not get my full attention for months, no game truly could. there's a lot more coming out this year. And I will be around for the eventual massive expansion that every Monster Hunter game gets, ready to once again pick up my sword and fight some incredible new monsters. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Subscribe, leave a comment, and like the video as it helps a lot more than you can imagine. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye!